today's tutorial is on Empire swimsuit pattern, and I have already went ahead and cut my fabrics. Just so you know, for my main fabric I will be using a fabric that I bought on Spoonflower. This is the sport lycra option. I have bought 1 meter and I have plenty left if I still want to do a bikini with it. But the other option was to buy a quarter, which wouldn't be enough, so I bought it 1. This is the 𝗕𝗺𝗽 fabrics, custom printed for myself. This is the number of the job and the design. The design is very beautiful, I really like it. And it's very thick, the fabric, and the weight of the fabric, so it's just perfect to build a swimsuit that gives you some support. So let's move on, and I'm going to show you which pieces I have on my table. This is the front piece of the main fabric, and this is the lining. The lining is 𝗕𝗵𝗍𝗂 by 𝗕𝗺𝗽𝗂. It's a very light fabric and smooth fabric, very comfortable. And this time, since this is already a little bit compressive and more weight fabric, I'm going to be using it despite you would probably want to use another more thick so that it compress you even a little bit more, but since I'm using this one, this is just enough and it's perfect. Then on the top here we will have our top part, which today I'm gonna be sewing an E-cup. So again, you should choose your size, print only your size, and then you should choose the C, D or E-cup, because the depth of the darts is different when I designed it. So this is a size 8 with the E-cup, and the E-cup also has a wider part here, but I'm sure you have seen the intro video, so you already know that I made this on the E-cup so that I have a larger, wider strap to give you more support. And I have cutted my swimwear fabric, and I also cutted the power mesh. This is strong power mesh, so it's a very nice way to give support to the bust area, and so my lining will be made with power mesh. The same for my back, which you can see that I have this small pattern piece here, which I used with a fold here. If you have this with seam allowance, just remove it and use it as a fold, because you don't need this seam allowance anyway. So I made the back again in power mesh, and of course the back in the main fabric and lining. And you might think this is strange, but it's actually not, because the method that I will be using today, I will be sewing my power mesh to my lining. Okay, so I will overlap these two fabrics, so that's why the back is entirely to the top here, and you will see that we will sew this with non-visible stitches on the entire neckline, front and back. Okay, and you will only see stitches on the leg line. I have already placed my back right sides facing together, and I have pinned the small smooth curve that is our center back seam. So this is very simple, just place your right sides facing together, and I'm gonna sew them together so that I can then have one piece for my back on the main and also on the lining. Again, this is the 𝗕𝗵𝗍𝗂. And I think that's it for today. For now, I'm gonna sew this center back, and I'm also going to go ahead and prepare the darts. You have a lot of videos regarding the darts and regarding why we use curved center back seams if you want to take a look at that video. And I will be filming just the essentials today, so that this is not a very long video, just to make sure that you are also able to reproduce this method at home. You always have a lot of different methods on how to sew a swimsuit, but I'm gonna suggest one, but if you want to do it differently, you can. So to sew the darts, I just folded the fabric, aligning the edge of the dart. This is a slight curved dart. If it's easier for you, you can go ahead and mark your seam allowance here, so that you know that once you reach the very edge of the fold, you still give 3 more stitches, leave the tail so that you tie 2 knots, and then you cut. So don't go back on your stitch on the end here, or you will have bulky edges of your darts. So that's how I sew my darts. But you, as again I told you, you have a specific video for that if you want. And I was almost forgetting to let you know that I have cut a wide long piece of fabric to do my straps. If I fold this in half, of course this will be enough. I don't measure, I just look at this and I think, okay, this is enough. I prefer to do them longer and then cut them, so this is enough for both of them once I cut on this side. And I've cut it with 10 centimeters today, because once you fold and you sew, it will be very nice and it will fit the pattern. I've also done another one with 8 instead of 10. It's also nice. You can do a little rush when you connect the strap to the top part edge of your top. But today I'm gonna go ahead and do it with this 10 centimeter strap. Let's sew the darts, center back seam, and come back to the table. Now that we have sewn our pieces, it's time to combine the front with the front top. So we can just align the edge here, pin and sew with the overlock, and we will have our front piece ready. We will then prepare the back. I'm gonna do this just like I did on the other pattern test that I already done, and I am going to secure my power mesh to my lining. On the wrong side of my lining, I'm gonna zigzag from one edge to the other here, so that my power mesh is attached to here. But before we do that, oh no, we are gonna do that, right. And then we are also going to do a basting stitch all along this edge here, and you can do it like 5 millimeters, so 1/4 of an inch from your seam allowance, because you will see in the next steps that we will then remove a little bit of fabric on this edge here. So for now, zigzag, pin in place, zigzag these two fabrics together, and sew the front just like I told you. You can see that I have sewn, I flattened the darts as always so that they look nice and neat once you have the swimsuit ready. And now I'm gonna set my front aside and I'm gonna show you the back. I still didn't baste the top edge there, but I did a zigzag here. You can see this is the wrong side, and you can see here that the zigzag is done. And this will be the side against your body, and it will have this. If you prefer to do the built-in bra floating, like not connected to your lining, please take a look at the Bora swimsuit or the version for the bodysuit. There I will show you exactly how to add an under bust elastic and how to do it floating. But today I want to do it with this method. So I'm gonna baste stitch as I told you, and I'm gonna come back. The same that we did for our main fabric, we should now do for our lining. So again, right sides facing together, and so we have a lining piece, only one. Now, because I'm going to apply the understitch method for my neckline, so that you don't have any stitch visible on the neckline and under the arm here, and of course on the back, what I need to do is remove from my lining a little bit of fabric on the areas where I'm going to apply the understitch. Let's say 1/4 of an inch, 0.6 centimeters. I honestly do this just by looking, and I just go ahead and cut. If you need to measure, do it, but I honestly do this just by looking. I'm folding the fabric in half so it's easier for me to do the same on both of them, and then I just cut. It's not even 0.6, it's like half a centimeter. And I have removed seam allowances here on the front, and now I'm going to do the back. As you can see, I have the basting stitch, and I did it in like 1 centimeter from the edge, so that now when I cut this, I'm not cutting the basting stitch, because it's going to be useful to align the fabric on the next steps. And I have removed the seam allowance, a little bit of the seam allowance also from the back. Now we are ready to combine front with back, right sides facing together for our lining and also for our main fabric. So this is the right sides, again with the right side, and I'm going to align for now the side seams. I will align one side, pin and sew it in place, and I'm going to repeat the process on the other side. Once that is done, I'm also going to do the same on my main piece. The seam is going to be towards the lower part here, and if you want, you can actually add elastic on this seam, which I'm going to do now. I haven't done this on my other tests, but I'm going to do it on this one today. So I'm going to go ahead and apply elastic. Let me think in which sides. Yeah, I'm gonna fold it like this, and I'm gonna apply the elastic on this side here, so that when we flatten it to the right side, we will have the seam in this position. Okay, so I will just apply the elastic on this edge, and then I will combine the side seams as I have explained you for the lining. I usually go for a 0.8 centimeter elastic, 5/16 of an inch. But since my seam allowance on my overlock is set to 1/4 of an inch, 0.6 centimeters, I have used an elastic with the exact same size, so that it's perfect when I use my overlock thread seam. And so when it's going to be open and I'm going to flatten to the wrong side, to the lower part, it's going to be perfect, and it's not going to add any bulkiness on this side here. And now we are finally ready to attach our side seams. So we can already go ahead and also sew the strap in half, applying elastic. I'm gonna cut it, and I'm gonna already divide it in 2 straps, but you can do it later if you want. I just prefer to do it now. So I have sewn just like I told you, and you can see that the sides, remember that sticky edge, but it's completely aligned, the front and the back, you see. And on this side, yeah, you see 2 millimeters there are not perfect, but it's quite nice. So now that I have my front and back together, and also my lining, I'm gonna place right sides facing together of my lining and also my main fabric. First, on the neckline, this area over here. And you remember that this one is a little bit smaller than the actual fabric, because we removed a little bit of fabric. So we are going to sew, applying the elastic on the side of our main fabric, not our lining, okay? and we are gonna then flip to the right side, and I'm gonna show you how you will do the understitch. You can choose not to do the understitch and just leave it like it will be, but I will go ahead and do the understitch to show you, okay? Never mind that this is not matching, it's okay, okay? Now, another thing I want to show you before we proceed. The straps are, I'm gonna try this new today. I only have this black elastic, and on my other one, I just applied elastic on the entire edge, and then once this is on the right side, of course, I made the elastic go to the inside of, to the reverse side, not, you know, not visible. But this time today, I improvised this small curve in the end of my strap, and I sewed it from one side to the other. However, to sew this on our swimsuit, we will need to open a hole here on the strap. So I sewed it, but then I'm gonna open a small hole. And I did this today like this because I want to try and insert this elastic inside here instead of the other method I used, only with an elastic from one side to the other. I want to insert this elastic. It's not going to be sewn on the side seam, but I want to try. It's something new for me. And then on the edge here, I did this because we will still have to do a small trick on the back to connect a piece that I'm gonna grab in metal or plastic if you want, so that we can tie a knot and create our straps so that they are adjustable. So I thought about, and I've just got it a small piece of fabric with 8 centimeters high, and let me tell you, and 20 centimeters wide. And I'm gonna sew this on the overlock here, and then I'm gonna split this in two. And when I do that, I will be creating some small loops so that I can then connect these bold rings that I'm gonna use today on the side of my swimsuit. Of course, you can decide if you want to do like something very big like I'm doing today, or a smaller piece, even a strap adjuster, very discreet, you can use that. You can use a ring, a smaller one. I'm gonna go for this today. And then my strap will come from the front and it will tie around here with a small bow, okay? And we will attach this to the back. Sewn my straps for the back, and again, if you don't have a ring, you can use just a piece of fabric like this and then tie the bow directly on your fabric. You don't actually need to have any accessory if you don't want to. I have sewn the top edge, as I told you, applying elastic on the sides of my main fabric, and now I'm going to slightly trim this sticky edge here. And when you open the seam, you flatten the seam against your lining, and now you do an understitch on these sides. A zigzag stitch only on the side of your lining, stabilizing the fabric, the seam against your lining, and that's the understitch. However, if you don't do it, I know that this will still be amazing and you will not see the lining because I applied elastic on the side of my main fabric, and my elastic sorry, is a little bit wider than my thread from my overlock, so this small bit here sticks out when it's on the right side, you see here, and that's what makes this is how I make sure that you don't see the second fabric on the side of your main one. But of course, if you have an elastic that is exactly the same width, like the one we have used under the bust before, you would have that problem, and so it would be better if you do the understitch. Okay, I'm not going to do the understitch because I really think and I really know that I will not need it. Okay, but you can do it now if you want to. Again, place right sides facing together, and now it's time to align under the arm. As I was saying, it's time to align under the arm and the entire back until you reach the opposite sides. And again, we will align it and we will apply the elastic on the side of your main fabric. So I prefer to also pin with that side outwards so that I don't do a mistake and sew the elastic on the wrong sides. Now, you know that this is not going to match, but you will make it match. So you will grab your fabric and you will align the side seam, first of all. Now that I see this, I think that on the front, maybe I stretched unintentionally a little bit, because of course this should also happen on the front and it didn't. So probably I stretched the main fabric unintentionally, but well, it is what it is. I'm not gonna stretch it also here, so I'm gonna ignore that small error that I have there because I'm gonna be able to sort it out later. And so again, just align from one edge until the opposite. Be sure to align correctly the center back seam, and then do this bit by bit, which will be easier for you. Okay, and once you have all of this pinned in place, go ahead and overlock, applying elastic on the sides of your main fabric. Sometimes, to make sure that my seams are completely aligned, especially the side seams, and that the actual seam is towards the back, which is what I want, sometimes I go to my straight stitch machine, and only on specific spots. I don't do all around. I think that's just a waste of time. But sometimes I do like a small basting stitch on the side seam here and on the back seam, just to make sure that when I'm on my overlock, the fabrics don't slide and I actually keep the perfect alignment that I want. Okay, it's just a small detail. I don't know if you want to do it or not. It's just, well, I wanted to share. I've sewn all around, and maybe you remember that we had a basting stitch on the back. Well, if you want to remove it now, I don't know if you can. Sometimes I just leave it there, and if it cracks, it cracks. It's not a problem because I know that it's correctly sewn, so it's not a problem. But if you want, you should try to remove it now. I'm not going to. Well, with our back all sewn in place, trim all the threads that you can so that you have a professional and very perfect finish in the end. And if you now reverse all this to the right side, you will already have all your neckline just perfect. Let me show you. Remember that we still haven't sewn the lower part here, so the fabric is not on the correct place. But once it's on the correct place, you will see that this will be aligned, and with the elastic that I explained, this will be just perfect. But now we still want to add this here, so let's gonna do that before we say that we can close the lower part here. Okay, so let's open this again on the back side, and we are just gonna seam rip some areas and attach our straps. I'm going to make them from the center back. I'm gonna place them, let me see, 3 centimeters and 3 to this side. Okay, so this will be here, and here. And now I'm gonna seam rip from between these dots that I've marked, and we will insert our rings with small loop. What I did was to mark a line on both of them so that I align that line with the edge, and I know that once they are ready they have the exact same size. You can show a little bit more or a little bit less. I made it here because I don't want this to go a little bit to go too much when it's on the outside, when it's on the right side of the fabric. Now if you want, you can use zipper foot if you have troubles because of the height of the fabric here with this, or a straight a normal presser foot. I think my normal presser foot will be able to do it. If not, I'm gonna go and do this with my zipper foot, so moving the needle to the left and trying to go exactly where I want. In this case, as you saw me aligning the line here with the edge of the fabric, and now I'm gonna go to my zigzag, to my straight stitch machine. I'm gonna do a zigzag here, starting on the threads on this side and ending on this side, so that these two threads are also secure. We have now cut them, so if we don't secure them, they will unfold in the future. So, two or three things. Of course, if you're gonna use your zigzag stitch, you cannot do this with your zipper foot or you will break your needle. I only remembered that when I was sewing. And then another thing that I wanted to share with you is that, of course, the positioning of these straps, I placed them 3 centimeters from the center, but they could be a little bit on the outer sides or a little bit more to the center. It's also like, this is also like, it's a style. You prefer, if you prefer to cross the straps, if you prefer to have them more towards the center of your back seam. So this will be up to you, okay? And now I'm gonna cut the excess that I have here for both of them. And now we will have our back completely done. So let me show you this in detail. I have stabilized this with these 3 pins, and I'm gonna do a straight stitch here just to stabilize the seam, okay? Because this is like a mess, okay? But once you stabilize it, it will look like this. I'm gonna sew this just so that this is flatter and it's easier for me to then secure my strap, okay? So I've done a zigzag stitch here, and you can see that we have no excess fabric on the side of our main fabric and no excess fabric on the side of our lining, you see? And this is because we removed the seam from the top edges, remember? That's why we have no excess fabric. Well, but let's dig in again into this. Now we want to grab the top edge and we want to align right sides facing together for our strap. So I'm gonna use the small hole that I have here to insert my strap. Of course, I don't want to do with the seam facing upwards. I want to do it on the reverse side. because of course I want my seam to be towards my lining. Okay, I'm gonna reverse just so it's easier. So if you use the hole to do this, and you have this here, and this is what I was telling you, you could of course use a thinner strap, 8 centimeters. This time I did 10 centimeters because I don't mind having a little bit of rush on my seam here, connecting these two seams together. So that's why I did it like so. Okay, so I'm gonna flatten on the back side, or on my lining side, I'm gonna flatten the fabric, but I'm gonna align it here on one of the sides very carefully with a pin. I'm gonna do the same here on the opposite sides. And all this excess that I have, because I cut it 10 centimeters, I'm gonna leave it on the front because I want to see that rush gather effect here on the front. So now I'm gonna just flatten more or less, giving the effect on the front, and I'm gonna pin and I'm gonna sew them together. And once this is sewn, you just pull, you trim the excess, you pull this to the right side, and you will see that you have your strap connected. If you wanted to have no rush effect, you would have to have the loop made for the strap exactly the same size as the pattern. Okay, I mean the double plus the seam allowances. Cut double size of your pattern once ready, plus seam allowances on both edges. So with my strap secure, I'm going to trim all the excess threads. I secured this with a zigzag and then with an elastic straight stitch that my machine has. And now I'm just going to cut the excess without cutting the zigzag or the straight elastic stitch. That's it. This was completely my first attempt on doing the strap like I've shown you. I don't think this here is perfect, this small edge here, but well, it is what it is. Of course you have to close this with the leather stitch, which I believe I have included in one video, which I don't remember what, so I'm gonna do another one and include it on the tips and tricks, like a separate video, okay? How to close this. I really hate closing this, but I'm gonna do it for you. Well, you can see that the elastic is perfect here, and this will be very comfortable on the body. And when it goes to the back, you can then tie a bow here. You can even cross them if you prefer. You can cross them if you prefer. It will be up to you. I'm not sure if this is actually too long. I think it is. This should be smaller. So maybe I'm gonna open, with this open, I'm gonna just cut a little bit of the elastic and maybe leave a little bit more without the elastic, the wide one, because I think this is, yeah, this will be too much for sure. So let's go again for the strap. Using the opening, place right sides facing together, but face your seam towards the back, so this way. So I'm gonna turn this way, okay? After I stabilize the top edge here, of course. Now use the opening, grab your top edge and try to center it more or less with the seam. And as I told you, I'm gonna create the gather on the front, so I'm gonna align the center back seam here with my strap. Then I'm going to align the side here. And from there, I'm gonna fold to the front. And this is where we really must try and be accurate, because this is when our finish and the connection between the strap and the main body, it's not perfect if you don't really tuck this in. Let me try. Okay, I'm gonna secure very well on the edge here through all the layers. This one was only my strap with the back, not the front. And I'm gonna align the opposite side here. And on the fold of the fabric there, I'm gonna fold to the front. And again, all the layers are going to be pinned. That's it. And now on the front sides, I'm just gonna brush a little bit the excess fabric. Place one pin or two over all the layers of fabric. And it's done. I can sew over this seam here. Once I've done that, I'm gonna trim and I'm gonna secure the elastic. I've already cut the elastic the same size of the other one. And the edge that is going to be on the top, on the edge of the fabric, I slightly curved it on the edges here. So you can clearly see the stitch that I told you that it's elastic on my sewing machine. And I'm going to trim the excess here. And remember, we want to attach the elastic here, but then trim the edges. So I'm gonna secure it to the seam on this small bit here with a zigzag or a straight stitch, but an elastic stitch, so that, or a tackle, just to make sure that the elastic is perfectly secure here. Now that my elastic is secure, I'm gonna trim the edges like we did on the other one. I'm gonna fold this to this side, turn this to this side. Whoa, I'm gonna do a zigzag on my elastic on the edge so it doesn't do what you have just seen. Cut the excess on the corners without cutting the threads. I'm just going to zigzag my elastic here and also on this edge. Now it's time to go and finish the lower part of our swimsuit. It's interesting because I've done this swimsuit from start to finish, cutting fabrics, everything. And it took me 2 hours and 15 minutes to do it. But when I'm doing tutorials, I end up taking twice the time, twice. So tutorials are very time consuming, and so sometimes I really struggle with it and I don't feel like doing them because they are very, very time consuming. Well, right sides facing together. I believe while I was talking you could see what I was doing. I placed right sides facing together of our main fabric. And I'm also going to do the same for the lining. However, I'm going to attach first these two, and then we combine the lining, and we are also going to sew the lining together with the main fabric, because this way this seam will have the 4 layers, okay? You can do it separately if you want. Sew these two together and sew the lining together, right sides facing together, of course, and then just finish the leg holes. But I'm gonna show you how to do first these two and then add the lining to this seam. So I have sewn the main fabric together, but let's start from the beginning. If you have your swimsuit on the table and you already have your main fabric sewn, just like I showed you, you have inside here your lining, the front and the back, okay? And you can just align them together and sew them if you want to, okay? But I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna match them with this seam. So I'm gonna grab the 4 layers of fabric here, and I'm gonna go and do this on the insides. I'm grabbing them just so that they stay in place. And now I'm gonna explain you what we do here. So the back is here, and this is the main fabric, and this is the front. We align the front with the main fabric. And now we are going to bring the back on top of our front. Just grab this one. Remember, this is in this position. What you want is right side with this one, like so, okay? So I'm gonna grab this one, and then I'm gonna lift this one, bring it from the top and align it here. And we will have 4 layers of fabric. If it's simpler for you to do separately, do it, but I like to do this because it will enable me, when I'm sewing the leg holes, to have already like a pivot point, like a place that is already sewn. So it makes it easier for the leg lines to be sewn. That's why I really like doing this. And that's it. Once you have the 4 layers aligned, sew them on your sewing machine. If you want, do a basting stitch first, just to make sure that the fabrics are aligned and are not stretching and the seams are all matching, okay? Do a basting stitch and then overlock. Done. Now just place everything on the right side. And now the finishing detail. Pin all around your leg line. Apply the elastic on the side of your lining piece, and then fold and zigzag or top stitch, and it will be done. Let me show you. When I apply the elastic, I stretch very slightly the elastic on the back. You can see here that it's very, just a little bit. Just because this is curved outside, and I believe when I put it on my body, it will feel a little bit more snuggling if I do this. But it's just a little bit. Now the final touch, and to finish the swimsuit, I haven't forgotten the leather stitch. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna include it on the tips and tricks, as I told you. Now the only finishing touch here missing is folding this fabric and doing a top stitch. I'm gonna make a zigzag, and then I'm gonna put it on myself to show you. Of course, this is an E cup, and I am not an E cup. And you will see that I will have for sure excess volume here because I don't have enough volume to fold to a cup E. But I mean, at least you will see more or less the style of the swimsuit, and you will be able to figure out if you want the E cup with the lower hip and the wide strap and everything. I think this is an amazing pattern. Wow. Let's finish this, and I'm gonna share, and that's it. Bye! So let's go ahead and do the leather stitch. I really hate it, and I'm just going to show you a little bit on camera. Well, I'm gonna go with my needle on the edge where I want to start, like if this was folded, okay, so it's on the fold line. And I'm gonna come with my needle outwards. Now you need to grab the fold fabric in front of you. So cross to the front and a little bit to the back. Let me do a zoom. So I'm on this side, and it's very hard for me to film this without sticking my head in front. Well, I crossed the front to the front, and then I came a little bit to the left, and I'm gonna pull. And now I'm gonna do exactly the same. Folded fabrics. I'm gonna come to the opposite sides, a little bit to the sides, and outside, pull. And now the same. Opposite sides, a little bit to the sides. And pull. And this is what we need to do like tons of times until we have closed this. And in the end, we just go one stitch inside, and then we come outside very far away. Well, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna show you, but not gonna film everything, so keep doing it. Now I've done it. Of course, if you go bit by bit, this is much more perfect than when you go long pieces. In the beginning, I was very patient and did small bits, and then I did a little bit bigger, so it's not so perfect. And now when I reach here, the end, I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do a knot. Just to finish it. And now I'm gonna insert my needle inside here, and I'm gonna pull it here, and I'm gonna cut. And that's it. Finished. And here you have the final result on a real body. I hope you like it, and see you soon. Bye!